Mati now, in the Lotus, if space was the unfolding, time is the journey. Space opens in all directions at the same time. Time, on the other hand, is the experience of moving through that unfolding. It is not a thing in itself, but the path that is generated when something that was contained begins to expand. That is why, when ancient cultures tried to represent time, they did not do so as a line or as an arrow. They represented it as a movement of opening. And the image that summarizes that gesture again and again is a flower. Time opens like a lotus. The lotus as an image of the journey. The lotus appears in multiple traditions as a symbol of connection between planes. It does not emerge on the surface, but in the mud. It passes through the water and opens toward the light. It is a form that unites origin, journey, and manifestation in a single gesture. For this reason, the lotus does not represent only purity or beauty. It represents the point of connection between the unmanifested and the manifested, the passage between potential and experience. In terms of consciousness, the lotus is the image of the inner journey, from the deep, dark, and undifferentiated, toward openness, perception, and form. Om Mani Padme Hum, the map of time. The mantra Om Mani Padme Hum condenses that entire journey, not as a prayer, but as a structure. Om, the primordial sound, what comes before all form. Mani, the jewel, the seed, the point of consciousness. Padme, the lotus, the opening of that seed. Incarnation, experience, and matter. Time follows exactly that path. First the void, then the point, then the opening, and finally concrete experience. But there is something even more important. That journey can also be made in reverse, from Hum to Padme, from Padme to Mani, from Mani to Om. That is the path of return. The lotus as crown and center of consciousness. In many traditions, the lotus appears associated with the crown, the upper point of connection of consciousness. Not because it is above, but because it is the place where experience reconnects with its origin. The open flower is consciousness unfolded. The closing flower is consciousness returning to the center. That is why the lotus is not only expansion, it is also contraction. And that idea leads us to a much more concrete image. The lotus as guardian of the womb of creation. The blue lotus and Egyptian time. In Egypt, the blue lotus of the Nile was one of the most important images of origin and time. It was not an abstract symbol. It was a direct observation of nature. The lotus opens with daylight and closes at dusk. Each day it repeats the same cycle. It is born, it unfolds, it folds back, and returns to the water. For the Egyptians, this is how time functioned. Time did not move towards something unknown. Time returned to the origin every day. That is why the lotus was associated with the birth of the sun, regeneration, and the continuity of life. Time was a living cycle, not a line that disappears. The lotus as a prophecy of consciousness. In this context arises the idea of the lotus as guardian of the center of creation. The lotus does not only open the world, it protects it. It safeguards the point where consciousness begins again. From there is born the image of the blue lotus as prophecy. When consciousness remembers its origin again, the lotus blooms once more, not only as a physical flower, but as a state of coherence between time, consciousness, and creation. The blue lotus represents the moment when time realigns with its original cycle. The Nile as the body of the lotus. If the lotus is the image of time, the Nile is its body. The Nile was not understood only as a river, but as an artery of consciousness. Its cycles of flooding and retreat marked the rhythm of the entire country. Agriculture, economy, rituals, and cosmology were synchronized with that pulse. The lotus, opening and closing in the Nile, embodied that rhythm. It was the visible expression of Egyptian time, a time that expands and contracts without losing its center. Aswan, the source of the lotus. And if the lotus represents the center of consciousness, its energetic source had to be located at a precise point. That point was Aswan. In addition to its strategic importance as a frontier and commercial node in antiquity, Aswan occupied a central place in Egyptian mythology because it was considered the site of the world's regulatory mechanism. In the region of Elephantine, Khnum was venerated the creator god, who gave form to life and regulated the flooding of the Nile. Khnum did not create from nothing. He shaped, ordered, calibrated the flow. Nearby, in Philae, the cult of Isis developed the mother, the force that recomposes what is fragmented and restores coherence to the cycle. Mother and creator, womb and form, consciousness and structure. That is why Aswan was not only a sacred place, it was the point where the cycle of time could be adjusted again, from the lotus to the golden egg. When the lotus opens, the world unfolds. When the lotus closes, the origin contains everything again. The golden egg is that closed form, the state prior to time, consciousness before sequence. That is why following the lotus to its source inevitably leads us to the egg, and that is why Aswan appears as the natural place to plant the first seed of the golden eggs as a consequence of the symbolic journey. The lotus leads to the center. The center contracts, and as it closes, it becomes an egg once again. The first temporal seed. I am not speaking here only of creating the future, but of remembering the cycle. Time is not repaired by moving faster forward. It is repaired by properly closing the flower. The blue lotus points the way. Aswan holds the source, and the golden egg is the form that emerges when time returns to its origin. This is the first temporal seed, the lotus that leads back to the egg. Welcome to the original lotus.